Who's the next captain of this ship that we call the Boston Red Sox? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. In case you've been living under a rock these last 24 hours, Chaim Bloom has been fired from the Boston Red Sox. He is no longer the head of baseball operations. Now, normally, once a series concludes on this channel, we highlight the series, talk about the series, and everything like that. But with everything going on with the Red Sox right now and the way that that series went, it feels like the more pressing video that we need to make right now is who's going to take over for Chaim Bloom. Where did the Red Sox go from here after losing Chaim Bloom? Now, there have been a ton of different names already thrown out as possible suitors to be the next head of baseball operations for the Boston Red Sox. So what we're going to do in today's videos, we're going to break them all down. We're going to talk about who's been mentioned already, why they've been mentioned, what their connection is. We're going to talk about what their possible fit with the Boston Red Sox could look like, and we're going to talk about the possibility of that person coming to the Red Sox. But before we get into that, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so when we're talking about possible replacements for Chaim Bloom, realistically, there are hundreds, right? There are hundreds of different people in the baseball world within different teams or out of baseball that could be a possible match for the Boston Red Sox. Obviously, there are a ton of names being thrown out right now, and it's going to be tough to narrow it down, and this is just an initial list, right? This list is probably going to change 100 different times before we actually get the legitimate replacement for Chaim Bloom, but right now, there are 6 names being mentioned more than anyone else, and those are the 6 names we're going to be covering today. The first of those 6 names is a guy by the name of James Click. James Click was the GM of the Houston Astros from 2020 to 2022. During that time, obviously the Astros won a World Series. They've been a juggernaut in Major League Baseball, and I actually think this is a really interesting idea, right? Especially with the situation James Click took over as GM when coming into the Astros in 2020, right? In that time, the Astros really had their core set up. They had a lot of really great pieces, and James Click's sort of job was to build around that core. And I think with where the Red Sox are at right now, that could be a perfect match, right? The Red Sox have a lot of core pieces set up, especially young core pieces set up. How do you build around that and bring this team up to a championship level contender is essentially what the Red Sox need going forward, and James Click could be that person. On top of that too, James Click does have a good relationship with Chaim Bloom. They had very similar philosophies, and James Click got into a front office in Tampa Bay in his first job in a front office because of Chaim Bloom, who recommended him for the position. He's also a Yale guy. He's very similar to what Chaim Bloom's bringing. Now, the big question here, well, actually, there are 2 big questions, right? The first is, what would he look like operating a big market like the Boston Red Sox, right? Would he be able to spend money like the Red Sox want to spend money right now? And would he be able to supplement this core very, very well? And I think that's sort of the question with every possible new GM or head of baseball operations, whatever you want to call it. And the other one is, what is his current situation with the Blue Jays? Because right now, he's vice president of baseball strategy for the Blue Jays. What does that contract look like? Can he get out of that contract? Is James Click even a possibility? Is the big question surrounding him. But I think overall, when you're looking at possible replacements, James Click could be a very interesting choice. Another guy being mentioned right now is a guy by the name of Mike Hazen. Now, Hazen should actually be fairly familiar for some of you guys who have been watching the Red Sox for a long time. Hazen was in the Red Sox system for about a decade, right? He played in multiple different roles, ultimately ending up as the GM for the Boston Red Sox in 2016. I think you all remember how that season went, right? Losing to the Guardians in the postseason. He was never really the head of baseball operations for the Red Sox, but he got pretty close under Dave Dombrowski. Now, in 2016, Hazen was offered a job with the Arizona Diamondbacks to be their vice president and general manager. Essentially, who Chaim Bloom was for the Red Sox, he was for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, during that time, Hazen's done a lot of really great things with the Arizona Diamondbacks, right? Specifically in the trade market. There have been some really great trades that have paid off really well for the Diamondbacks. Some examples are the Zach Gallen trade for Jazz Chisholm, Gurriel, and Monero, a catcher for Dalton Varsho. He brought in JD Martinez and more, and he really built up a great young core with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and honestly, kind of turned that system entirely around. Mike Hazen, in my opinion, is an extremely extremely impressive operative in the front office for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He has that connection to Boston. This could be a real possibility in terms of bringing him back and having him head baseball operations for the Red Sox. Again, the big question with Hazen is, does he want to leave Arizona, right? He's sort of the big fish in that kind of small pond that is the Arizona Diamondbacks market, and he's done a really great job. Does he want to leave that now as the core is starting to develop and become a legitimate contender in the NL West, or is he going to want to come back to Boston and see what he can do with a Boston-sized payroll and with a Boston system like Chaim Bloom is set up for the Red Sox? That's a big question, but I think Mike Hazen is a really, really great option for the Boston Red Sox if his name is on the table. Another name being thrown out there is a guy by the name of Brandon Gomes, who is currently the GM of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, Gomes has a little bit of an interesting path to becoming a front office executive. He started as a legitimate pitcher in Major League Baseball. He played with the Tampa Bay Rays for a while. He was traded a couple of different times, but ultimately he ended up leaving the game of baseball on the field and trying to get into the front office, where he entered the Dodgers organization as a pitching coordinator, pretty quickly rose up through the ranks to become the GM of the Dodgers. Now, in my opinion, getting someone from the Dodgers is kind of the dream, right? Especially if you're getting the GM of the Dodgers. As the GM of the Dodgers, you're working under Andrew Friedman really well, and on top of that too, you've got experience with the Dodgers, who in my opinion are one of the best run organizations in all of Major League Baseball. He understands the importance of a homegrown developed core. He understands the ability to spend big money like the Dodgers have spent over the last couple of years, and he understands trades and trade values and stuff like that to the level that the Dodgers understand it, which is at a very high level, right? Bringing in someone from the Dodgers, in my opinion, like Brandon Gomes, would be an absolute home run. Now, the problem with Brandon Gomes is that he's very loyal to the Dodgers. While coming up in their system, Gomes was actually offered a bunch of different jobs as an executive in a higher position, essentially being a GM for other teams before becoming the GM of the Dodgers, and every single time he was very quick to turn them down, stating that he wants to be with the Dodgers and wants to continue to grow with the Dodgers. But now that he is the GM and the Red Sox have the money that they have, could they offer him enough money to come over here and take on a new challenge and be the head of baseball operations for the Boston Red Sox? That's sort of the question with Brandon Gomes. But again, I think Brandon Gomes, when we're talking about what his impact on the Red Sox could be, I think it could be a really, really positive one, right? The Dodgers were never afraid to make that big trade. They were never afraid to make that big signing. And that's kind of what you need with the Red Sox right now. If you're moving away from Chaim Bloom, you need conviction in your next baseball operative. And I think Brandon Gomes could very easily be that. It's just a question of whether or not you can pry him away from the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, on top of that, there's a couple more names mentioned, one of them being Chris Antonetti. Now, Chris has actually been in the Guardians front office for a very long time. He's been with the Cleveland Guardians since 1999. He took over baseball operations in 2016, and he's done a lot of really great things with the Cleveland Guardians, especially if you consider what his payroll, what his limitations were with the ownership of the Cleveland Guardians, right? He won 2022's Executive of the Year, going 92-70 in 2022 with the Cleveland Guardians, and during that time, he had the third lowest payroll in all of baseball. He's also been able to build up specifically a really great young pitching core, both through trades and through drafting and development, and I think a big thing with the Red Sox going forward is to incorporate that young pitching core, try and build up that young pitching core like you're seeing with the Dodgers, like you're seeing with the Marlins, like you're seeing with the Braves, like you're seeing with the Guardians, right? That young pitching core that can continue to grow and develop as your team continues to grow and develop. So Chris could be a really interesting option. There's also rumors too that once Terry Francona retires, which he's hinting at retiring this year, Chris could be ready for another challenge, which would be the perfect timing for the Boston Red Sox to swoop in and try and pick up Chris Antonetti. Now, the big question, again, like we talked about with James Click, is how is he going to operate in a big market like the Boston Red Sox, right? For years and years and years, really decades, Chris has had a really set budget. He's had to work under very minimal conditions in terms of payroll, right? And he's been able to put together a successful team. How quickly can he transition into a bigger market, into a ownership that really wants to spend money this offseason and wants to make that big splash? Can he do that successfully? And can he continue to build around the core of this Red Sox team successfully? Can he do both, right? We know he could do one of them. Can he do the other? And that's the big question for me. And that, to me, is the big question surrounding everyone who comes into the Red Sox. And I think that's, to me, the biggest fear when it comes to finding a new head of operations, right? Is it going to be a guy who can spend that big money wisely, or is it a guy who's been with a small budget team for so long that they come in here and they spend unwisely. That's my biggest fear, and that's my fear with Chris Antonetti. David Forst is one of the two names left remaining that has been talked about as the new head of operations for the Red Sox. Forst is currently the GM of the Oakland Athletics. And I know what you're thinking, right? Corbin, what? Why would we bring in the Oakland Athletics GM after everything they've been through over the last couple of years, right? And that's a fair statement, but there's also been a lot of success as David Forst being the GM of the Oakland Athletics since he took over in 2015. He still worked under Billy Beane, but during that time, there was a stretch between 2018 and 2020 where the Oakland Athletics made the playoffs 3 years in a row. They had successful seasons 3 years in a row, and they were able to build up a young, really talented core during that time. The problem is, right, not so much with David Forst, but with the ownership and with Billy Beane in general, their philosophy is, hey, don't hang on to guys, trade them if you can, try and keep rebuilding this core, and we'll continue to grow small ball wise, right? And I think that's what David Forst has been a part of over the last couple of years. Again, it's sort of like a Chris Antonetti situation, not the head of baseball operations, but he's been operating under an extremely small budget for a really long time. What could he do in a bigger market? There's also a connection with Forst and the Red Sox. When he was playing professional baseball, he was with the Red Sox for a little bit, never cracked the big league club, but in their minor league system, he went to Harvard, so there's that Boston connection there. It's an easy connection to make with Forst and the Boston Red Sox. Again, I don't know how inclined I am, if I'm the ownership of this Red Sox group, to take on a guy who you don't really know what they're going to look like in a bigger market. So in my opinion, this is a guy that is connected to the Red Sox, but I don't know if he's a true candidate for the position of baseball operations. Now, the last guy being mentioned a lot for a possible GM role is Alex Cora. Yes, that Alex Cora, the manager of the Boston Red Sox, who stated multiple times over these years that he eventually would like to get into the front office and go into the business side of baseball. Obviously, when there's a hole in your own team, that transition seems like it could be a little bit easier. And I actually really like the idea of Alex Cora in this front office. Now, let me explain before you guys tear me apart here, considering all I've talked about this video is experience with bigger markets, right? Obviously, Alex Cora doesn't have any experience in the front office with any team, but who's going to know the needs of this 40-man roster more than Alex Cora, a guy who's been with this 40-man roster for a couple of years now, right? That's a guy who can understand what the players need, what this team needs to reach the next level. Now, the big thing here with Alex Cora is if that is a transition the Red Sox want to make, it can't be the only transition made, right? I could see a situation where someone takes over Chaim's position, which was head of baseball operation, as well as Alex Cora taking over the GM position. Pairing him with someone who has that expertise, in my opinion, is how you successfully transition Alex Cora into a more front office role and have him handle everyday, sort of day-to-day 40-man roster decisions, as opposed to being the guy who oversees everything. And I think that could be successful. But again, you're talking about a guy who's never been an executive in Major League Baseball, and that could be a bit of concern, especially with the offseason the Red Sox are going to have. So those are the 6 names right now. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this list is going to change a million different times. There are going to be a million different people who are connected to the Red Sox, who are talked about as possible Red Sox GM. But of these 6 names right now, if I have to pick this second, I think I would go with Alex Cora as the GM and have him run every day sort of 40-man roster decision type situations. And then I would bring in Mike Hazen. I think Hazen has done a fantastic job with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think trade-wise, he's done an excellent job of continuing to build up a core from within and be able to evaluate and assess talent and figure out which guys you want to invest in and which guys you're going to flip and try and make this team better pretty successfully as well. He's handed out a lot of great contracts in his time there. He's been able to lock down Corbin Carroll, who's excellent and who is a big piece for the Arizona Diamondbacks in the future. And he also has experience in the Boston market. I think he is right now the perfect guy to be the head of baseball operations, and then you bring Alex Cora in as a GM. But that's just my opinion, and there's a million different scenarios here. So let me know in the comment section down below, which way are you going? Who do you want to be the next Red Sox GM? Your initial thoughts, right? There are going to be a million different options. Who would you pick right now? Let me know all your thoughts on the Red Sox search for a new front office executive in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button in this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.